I moved to Iceland December 1999, and I came with my then boyfriend, now husband. We'd been living in Boston in the United States together for quite a few years, and he had to come home to finish his education and for some family things. And I decided I'd just try it. We were just going to come for a couple of years, and yeah, we're still here. First, definitely the language, because you move here, if you don't have the language, you don't make any connections. And I definitely had no connections. I mean, my mother-in-law didn't speak English. We sat at the kitchen table and I had a little tiny English Icelandic dictionary, looking up one word and using my hands, and it was just, my best friend was his younger sister, who at the time was 16. A 28-year-old woman, it was really a strange mix. Yeah, and so that was first, just trying to figure the language, the darkness, because I came at that time of the year, and it was just, wow, it was just always dark, and it was just so bizarre to get used to it. But at first, some things were a little bit exciting because it was a challenge. But then when I saw that it was a much bigger challenge than I mean, the only job I could get was cleaning. And I had been learning to be a cook, and I went and I made a connection, and he said right away, oh no, you have to go back to school, and if you're going to cook here, then you have to work first as a student, and that was like 600 kroners an hour only on the weekends until 2 in the night, and I was just like, whoa, what have I done to deserve this? I can clean, or I can work as a low-paid. I didn't see myself. I came from America, in education, and I didn't see myself as, didn't understand until that was it. That's all I had, and it just seemed to be more and more difficult. I wasn't really meeting anyone. People only wanted to talk to me when they were drinking, and they'll talk to me in English. That's kind of how I felt, You can maybe exaggerate things, but that was my experience at the time. And so yeah, my first job was cleaning alone. And then I went home for a whole month because to get the dvalarleyfi, there were certain things that had to go through with getting a job and paperwork. So I just went home and I waited for that stuff to happen. I came back in March, or the end of March, and I started working then in a preschool in April, because I decided that I had to learn the language. And if I was going to learn the language, it might be good to start learning where other people are learning, because language courses at the time were extremely expensive. And I was making something like 20 or 30,000 kroners a month cleaning, It was a joke. And so yeah, that was the levy I was waiting for. The permission was so I could get the job in the preschool, and we got the permission for that. Then I came back, and my dvalarleyfi, my living permit, was based on the fact that my boyfriend was responsible for my housing and for part of my income, because I obviously didn't have enough just cleaning. And then the permit came through for me to work in the preschool, and that was pretty tough. Tough for me to get accepted. I don't know that I really ever was accepted. I was an interesting person to have at work. I didn't really understand if I was. And then I was building the language, but it was the thing that kept me here, because I fell in love with the job. It was a really great job. It was definitely the preschool job. It was just, I felt sort of empowered being a preschool teacher, regardless of what people say out there about how tough it is and all of that. You have a lot of freedom to do, a lot of freedom to create, and every day you get like 100 hugs. I mean, you can't feel better than that. And it was just really empowering for me, because the more I learned about my job, the more freedom, because they need people to be responsible, and I was willing to be responsible. The more freedom I got in my job, and I was lucky enough to have a high school education. I have a diploma, and I was able to get into university. And I just slowly learned more language and got more empowered by being in school and the freedoms that I was allowed in my job. And I was really quick to go up. I went from being, as people call it, a languageless person at the bottom of the chain in a preschool. I only worked half days to working full days to, becoming a hope story, a group boss. I was like, wow, I can control one little group. And to being a Delta story, to being a preschool teacher, to, all of these things, to being an assistant principal, to being a principal, to being having a little role in the community out from the school and working with. So it was definitely being a preschool teacher that kept me here. The best thing is when you're accepted and when Icelanders open up, they are some of the best people in the world. And that's the truth. I mean, I've had, even though I kind of highlight a lot of the difficulties, it's just because they need to be highlighted. But as soon as Icelanders open up those arms, you guys are amazing. And I think I said it in my when I did Eldhús, that throughout, even though it's been really difficult at times, and I know there are a lot more immigrants who've had it difficult, just think about it. I've only been here 17 years and I made it all the way to being a deputy speaker in the Parliament. You can do so many things here, you really can. And though some people have it hard, there are just so many opportunities. There is an education system that everybody has access to. And we need to, continue to make it better and make sure that we keep it open. But definitely, yeah, that's the best thing about Iceland. There are opportunities, and once you get accepted, you just don't give up because it'll happen. And the worst thing is, Icelanders can also be very closed. And they can turn a blind eye because like I'm seeing the work that I do with immigrants, there are a lot of things that happen that people don't admit. Because we are, Icelanders kind of want to be the best and the most, and we're kind of really, really glad to accelerate and exemplify and put on display the things that are good, when really we need to put a lot more effort into some of the things that are slipping. And if you watched the news yesterday about the increasing number of young people who are getting into drugs, it's because they don't feel well. The amounts of depression here in Iceland, when we have so many opportunities, something doesn't balance. And it's because we are turning a blind eye to the fact that maybe some people aren't getting their foot in school, that immigrants aren't getting the same access to upward mobility and things like this, which really don't need that much effort. Do you know what I mean? We're not talking about millions of people who are dealing with depressions, we're talking about thousands. We can totally do something about these things. So that's probably the worst thing. Definitely, because they're interesting. They are really interesting, and the fact that Icelanders only being 340,000, that we've been able to keep them, I think it's very important, and I try my best. I know I went to Denmark for the first time, and we went to Hus Jón Sigurðsson, and I came back and I started to ask my son about it, and he didn't know anything. I was like, whoa, well, we have to do something about this because my son knows about Abraham Lincoln. And I think it's really cool to talk about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, but these are things we need to talk about. They are interesting and they are unique. So I think that it is very important. And I also think in order to bridge the gap, especially with us foreigners, I've said it before that every single foreigner who learns Icelandic, and learns about Icelandic heritage and culture, that's like the best thing that could happen, because it's one more person to keep it alive. So definitely. Definitely learn. Don't turn a blind eye. Don't be defensive to what people say about what they've experienced. Learn from it, meet them, and bridge the gap. Bridge the gap. Let them not just know that they're welcome. Let them know that they're welcome to all of it, and they can have it. Because the truth is, I have not met a foreigner who hasn't said that they don't want to learn Icelandic and that they don't go home and sort of brag about how things are good here. I know that I do that. I know that I had like arguments with my family at home about some things that are really, really great here that we maybe put down here, or maybe, you know, as a member of parliament or something, I say we have to do better. But these are things that are very important to let foreigners sort of have a little ownership. You know, don't be defensive about it, because it's a victory. The more of us foreigners, you know, when I voted for myself in 2016, because I just thought, I really didn't believe I was going to get into parliament, but I thought just the idea that my name should be on the ballot, a foreigner's name should be at the top of the list on the ballot, it was so special. I borrowed my mother-in-law's family dress, and I went and I voted in traditional Icelandic. I'd never been in, I didn't even know how to walk in it. I was really well. But I just felt like it was such a special thing, and it was something that was so Icelandic, and it was so important that I needed to show it that much respect. And I think that every foreigner I know should have the opportunity to wear one of those costumes and be proud of being a part of what Iceland is.